Hello and welcome to a new episode in the Able Muse Poetry Reading Series. I am your host, Jennifer Reeser, and I have the privilege and honor to present three accomplished, esteemed poets with the press, Mr. John Philip Drury, Ms. Rhina Espaillat, and Ms. Gail White. Before we begin, please let me remind our viewing audience that they may leave comments or questions in the chat box for me to relay, or wait until the end of the broadcast when there will be a question and answer session. Then they may unmute themselves and address our authors directly. But first, let me introduce Mr. Alexander Peppel, who founded and edits Able Muse and Able Muse Press, and also founded and directs the Erratosphere online workshop. His poetry and prose have been or will be published in Barrow Street, River Styx, American Arts Quarterly, Light, Think Journal, Euphony, Per Contra, Eclectica, Measure, and elsewhere. He edited the Able Muse Anthology from Able Muse Press, 2010. Alex?
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I'm pleased to see all of you again here tonight for another Able Muse reading event. Tonight's event, I believe, is a treat because we have three very distinguished poets reading. We have Rhina P. Espaillat, John Philip Drury, and Gail White. I'm sure we'll be in tonight for a very enlightening and entertaining reading. So without further ado, take it away, Jennifer.
Thank you, Alex. So let's get started. Our first poet is Mr. John Philip Drury, who is the author of 4 full-length poetry collections, most recently Sea Level Rising from Able Muse Press, and just finished a new collection entitled The Teller's Cage. He has also written Creating Poetry and The Poetry Dictionary, both from Writer's Digest books. His awards include an Ingram Merrill Foundation Fellowship, 2 Ohio Arts Council grants, and the Bernard F. Connors Prize from the Paris Review. John also writes narrative nonfiction and several chapters from 2 different memoirs, Aria in the State Mental Hospital, 2 Women with a Boy in the 1950s, and The Bad Soldier, a picaresque memoir of enlisting in the Army to avoid being drafted during the Vietnam War, have been published in Gettysburg Review, Evansville Review, Consequence, Alligator Juniper, and as a Plowshares solo. He has taught at the University of Cincinnati for 37 years. John?
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm grateful to Alex Peppel and Karina Fernandez for making this event happen, and I'm thrilled to be reading with Rhina and Gail. I'm going to read the poems in the 6th and last section of The Teller's Cage. The title referring to a bank teller and the station she has behind the counter, which is traditionally called a cage, but also the teller as a storyteller. These poems are all about my mother, who died 14 years ago here in Cincinnati. But we're both from Maryland, from the eastern shore of Maryland, Cambridge, which is literally on the banks of the Choptank River. And we moved to Bethesda, Maryland, when I was 8, after my father had left and my mother was keeping company with a former opera singer named Carolyn Long. My mother started working at the Bank of Bethesda and rose to become head teller of the bank. The first poem began as a word list exercise I did with the PhD students in a graduate seminar called The Sources of Poetry. This was right before the pandemic hit. All of these students are published poets, some with full-length collections, some with chapbooks, And I was lucky enough to get a list compiled by Nick Mulvert. And the list was this, 5 words: wave, gossip, juice, look, and emboss. I practically jumped with excitement when I saw the words wave and gossip, because I thought of the gray waves of the Choptank River and the gossip that was bedeviling my mother and really made her want to leave her hometown. So I thought of the phrase, the gossip of gray waves, and proceeded from there. And I thought right away, maybe this wants to be a rondeau. And so that's what it became. The poem is called Gossip. The gossip of gray waves along a stretch of broken oyster shells consoles the wretch looking upon the choppy Choptank. She would love to merge in murky brine, to flee the venom that's embossed on human speech. Her marital secrets leak out in a screech on party lines. Forbidden love can't teach gospel to bigots who need her remedy, the gossip of gray waves. The woman, who's my mother, wants to reach out of her kitchen window near a beach in Florida, pluck an orange from a tree and squeeze it for fresh juice, and hear with glee the breezes in royal palm fronds as they match the gossip of gray waves. The next poem also began as a writing exercise I did along with students. In this case, though, I was subbing for Brian Broder in a summer class on Midwestern poets. These were 3-hour sessions, 1 poet each hour. And one of the hours was devoted to the poems of Ted Kooser. And after we discussed his work, we all composed drafts of poems responding to it. And the poem I was responding to is his poem, Selecting a Reader. And mine is called Choosing a Reader. She's dead, and so she's hard of hearing, stuck in a graveyard in Maryland. In fact, she's ashes in a canister underground. So first, I have to drive 600 miles, arriving late at night, a harvest moon orange on the river, park my car on gravel, and dig until my garden trowel hits metal. I'll need a Phillips screwdriver to open the dirty urn. I'll need a spell, the best special effects, to coax the bone and cinders into a semblance of a human being. Son, she'll say, why did you disturb me here? I know that what I show her must be worth the trouble of her rising, as she clucks her tongue at typos, getting her interested for a short spell to keep the pain at bay while a lost world begins to materialize, its radiance emerging from black letters. The next poem, that's my dog Guinevere out in the entryway. I hope she won't make too many comments. Okay, this one is called Arguing About Computers, and it's based on a conversation I had with my mother. It all comes down to 1 and 0, Mom, I said at breakfast, trying to explain the mystery of computers. I'm too old for that, she said, that shit. I tried to get her interested in buying one herself, thinking the binary system might excite her since she had always liked to work with numbers. It's like Morse code, I said, the dots and dashes. My yes was answered by my mother's no, I hate computers. When the bank got theirs, I couldn't be a teller anymore. I had to quit. Computers took my job. The miracle she craved, something to help her keep on breathing, wasn't digital. Stupidly, trying her patience, I persisted. It's like a light switch, Mom, on, off, on, off. The title poem is in the voice of my mother. It's a persona poem. And for some reason, my mother decided to deliver it in the form of a Petrarchan sonnet. So this is the teller's cage. My hands got dirty from the cash I handled, working behind brass bars in a teller's cage. And though it said head teller on my badge, I couldn't get a raise. All my plans dwindled. After I settled, when the bank closed, I bundled worn, torn dollars with paper straps. On edge for holdups, I never gave my alarm a nudge. Mornings, I loved the crisp new bills I fondled. Counting my cash, I often came up short. Millions of dollars flowed, a tap opened up, tinting me with a wash of currency. The bank officials on the balcony peered down, not sharp enough to see me slip anything in my purse, my larcenous heart. And the poem after that is another dramatic monologue in my mother's voice, this one in blank verse. It's called The Teller's Love Life. Abby was old enough to be my mother, so that's why, naturally enough, I thought maybe she was my mother, not my sister. She would have been 18 when I was born, not an adult, but easy to conceal in a home for wayward girls in another state. I was 9 years old when Daddy killed himself and Abby married, alone with a so-called mother and Sarah, the middle sister who broke my nose, pushing me upstairs to the attic. Visit the sprawling house, and on the wooden stairs, my blood stains are still there. Mother took cruises, and while she sipped her highballs in Bermuda, Sarah took care of me. Some joke. She had the meanest eyes. Oh, she was beautiful, but heartless. Even her hands were mean, mean, mean. The year I went to college, a finishing school they forced me to attend, Abby was driving Mother and Mrs. Stafford to the beach, wearing sunglasses, but they blocked her view. A Victor Lynn truck smashed into the car, crushed Abby, killing her and Mrs. Stafford, whose family sued and won. Mother was saved by the suitcase she was holding on her lap, but she was injured badly. I dropped out to come back home and nurse her back to health. They took what Abby left me in her will, not just the money, which was bad enough, but the huge Persian cat that we adored. His name was Snooks. The picture in my locket, even now, is Abby holding Snooks, who font of gray fur, sweet expressions on both their faces. But Sarah took it upon herself to take him to the vet, have him put to sleep. She boasted, "That was the happiest day of my whole life. I can't help crying, makes me so damned mad." But I got back at her. She came to dinner one Thanksgiving, and when I served the turkey, I asked her, "Sarah, does it meet your standards?" "Why, yes, indeed," she said. And so I said, "I cooked it in the roasting pan we used for Snooks's litter box." She stopped mid-bite, spit out the morsel, got up, grabbed her husband, and wouldn't even speak to me for a year. It was well worth the silence. But we made up, at least enough for civilized reunions, and even spent our holidays together. Blood is thicker, you know. She must have known in her devil's heart that she had done me wrong, ganging up on me, siding with Mother, treating me like the orphan that I was. Growing up in that house, haunted by death, paying for room and board when I was 12, I felt like Cinderella, her evil stepsisters rolled into Sarah. I didn't get a prince, although I married. So I had to wait year after year in a tiny Cape Cod cottage built in the side yard of the monstrous house that towered like a yacht above its dinghy, until I met a glamorous soprano, sweet as Abby, loving and vivacious, an opera singer who stepped off the stage to rescue me. A pants role she performed, playing Cybele to Ezio Pinza's Faust, outdoors at night, lions roaring when the Met spent summers at the Cincinnati Zoo, so we could live, love, princesses together. I'm going to end with a poem that was published in the winter 2019 issue of Able Muse. It's called The Ruined Aristocrat, and it's in 3 parts. And I'll say something about the background of each part before I read it. The first one is based on my mother's stories about a phone conversation that she had with movie director John Waters on the Sally Jesse Raphael radio talk show in Washington, D.C. in the 1980s. And I simply tried to reconstruct their dialogue without knowing exactly what they said. It's called All Night Radio Call-In Show. Good evening, Mr. Waters. I believe the two of us may actually be related. One of my ancestors, named Edward Waters, came with the early colonists to Virginia, but on the way, they left him in Bermuda. Some say he killed a man, but on the beach, he found some ambergris. You know what that is? Whale puke? Throw up. They use it for perfume. He might as well have stumbled on pirate gold. I love it. One more scoundrel in the family. I do hope you're my cousin. What's your name? Miss Bobby is what all the neighbors call me. How charming. Lost plantation decadence. This call-in show must be the new Schwab's drugstore where I found my latest movie character, the ruined aristocrat in a row house. I paint, so I could paint the window screens, like the sailboat I painted on my bathroom window to keep the peeping Toms from watching me. Perfect, yes. I can see those screen doors now. Baltimore Gallery of marble stoops, perfect for an opening montage. My real name's something else. Friends call me Bobby because my father hankered for a son, fretted, afraid, since he was almost 50 when I was born, he'd never have a boy to be his heir, take over his dry goods store. And so the nurse informed him, little Bobby is here, and the name stuck. How marvelous. I'm giving you my private number. Call me. I want to hear about our relative. My mother actually did a good deal of research on this particular relative, but I found it especially helpful to consult the firsthand account of William Strachey from 1610. He was a passenger on the same ship that was shipwrecked in Bermuda. He was also friends with Ben Jonson and John Donne, and his account was an influence on The Tempest. Also, I referred to a history written by Captain John Smith, published in 1624, and a more recent book called The Shipwreck That Saved Jamestown, The Sea Venture, Castaways, and the Fate of America by Laurie Glover and David Blake Smith, published in 2008. So this is the Ballad of Edward Waters. In 1609, the fleet set sail for the Jamestown colony, but scattered when a hurricane raised mountains in the sea. Through Alps of waves and waterfalls of rain, the Sea Venture rose to peaks, then skidded down ravines. But soon the ocean's blows knocked out the caulk between the boards and opened up the hull, so water entered, rising up, and soon the ship was full. The admiral, Sir George Somers, pointed with his sword. Passengers and crew start bailing, throw cargo overboard. Edward Waters, his right-hand man, stripped to his waist to drain brine that rose from the leaky hull and down from the hurricane. The whipstaff broke, wind ripped the sail and wound it around the mast. 3 days and night they pumped and prayed, exhausted from the blast. Sir George caught sight of a flash of light that flitted close at hand, a vision of St. Elmo's fire, and then he shouted, "Land!" The crew broke out the liquor, toasted Providence in their revels. But the admiral scanned his charts and knew the place was the Isle of Devils, which Spanish seamen called Bermuda, its archipelago surrounded by a reef, renowned for sending ships below. He feared the ship would run aground. The mate was sounding depths. The vessel drifted on a reef and wedged within a cleft. The coral could have ripped the hull, but all survived the wreck, ferried ashore in boats they stored like turtles on the deck. They landed on a pink-tinged beach by a turquoise lagoon, surrounded by volcanic rocks and suddenly marooned. The colonists found a paradise, but voted not to stay. They rushed to build 2 pinnaces to transport them away. But Edward and Sir George explored Bermuda's island chain, rowing the ship's boat all around the crescent-shaped lagoon, taking measurements, drawing a map, and on the waves a whale. Below the compass rose, it floated, flipping up its tail. With new ships built, they sailed again, but the admiral returned with Edward Waters to Bermuda. Soon he would be mourned. Some claim he died while chasing boars, some from glutting on pork. But dead he was, whatever the cause, so the ship's crew set to work. They buried his heart by a makeshift church, shipped home the rest of the admiral, tossing him into pickling brine, then stuffing him in a barrel. The patients left 3 men behind, Carter, Chard, and Waters, who planted beans and pumpkins, built thatched cabins for their quarters, and kept a watch for approaching ships from Bermuda's highest land, and rowed their boat from isle to isle to walk along the strand. 3 kings, or 3 custodians, they searched for what the tide washed in. Doubloons were scarce. They found no oysters with pearls inside. But one day, as they walked along the shore of the lagoon, they saw a wet, gray, distant heap, drowned body of a man. Yet closer in, they realized they found their golden fleece in a huge, waxy, sweet, and musky chunk of ambergris. The trio's peace was broken. Mine, no, mine. I saw it first. They wrestled on the beach. Tired out, they hauled it as they cursed, heaving the load on board the boat and rowing through the sea. They carried, lugged, grappled, and tugged the sperm whale's legacy. Some say that Edward killed a man and hid in a limestone cave, but that was a different castaway who bore the same last name. These 3 compatriots could not agree who'd keep their riches until they thought of how those caves made perfect hiding niches. One morning, fishing in their boat, they traded fighting words, punching and wrangling, swinging oars till all fell overboard. One night, Chard yelled at Edward, "Choose your weapon, pistol or sword." But Chard hid the weapons until peace had been restored. The best truce was the syndicate the 3 men finally came to, planning to smuggle ambergris for the Virginia Company laid claim to. After 2 years had passed, a ship brought settlers and supplies. They bribed the captain, but were caught and forfeited their prize. When Edward reached Virginia, he got married, but nearly died in the Powhatan massacre. Against a cypress, both were tied, but loosened their ropes and found a boat on the bank of a nearby run. They rowed back home. The following year, they had their only son. Edward Waters did not lament lost riches of ambergris. A hiding place in his travel case guarded a hefty piece. And the final section was written in a bar in Empire, Michigan during a sabbatical several years ago. And it uses the form of the stave of 6 as like I wandered lonely as a cloud in the rhyme scheme, but pentameter instead of tetrameter. And this one is called, "What If My Mother Had Dialed the Director's Private Number?" Miss Bobby phoned the talk show from the apartment she shared with Carolyn, a singer who gave lessons to pay for half of the monthly rent, more economical for roommates, 2 women alone, though no one else knew how, decades ago, they'd traded wedding vows. She loved to talk, but calling Mr. Waters shook her nerves. Research provided some relief, though pink flamingos shocked the long-lost daughter of the American Revolution. She laughed in spite of her aristocratic past and had a hunch she'd fit right in the cast. For manners made a personal disguise Miss Bobby used while working in the bank. When she said queer, her tone said it applies to others, not myself, and so she shrank from calling her lover anything but cousin. Yet something rose in her and made her brazen enough to phone the director. Stirred by Coke and bourbon, she exuded so much charm, she found herself on set and take by take entered the movie business in the form of bossy drama coach, daft socialite, and tipsy housewife vacuuming at night. Bit parts, but giving her safe harbor in the port of Baltimore, in the free state where she could feel at home in her own skin and publicize what's truly intimate, joining a company where every role clarified layers of her conflicted soul, and took her back to a tropical vacation, companion to a wealthy friend who napped while she hung out on the sand with gay Black men, finally released from feeling trapped by what was proper, lady who could breach the social barriers on a steel drum beach. Thank you.
John, thank you so much. That was delightfully lovely. And you ended on a dime. That was a great poem.
Thank you. Thanks, Jennifer.
All right, now let's move on to Dominican-born Rhina P. Espaillat has published 13 full-length books, 4 chapbooks, and 2 CDs comprising poetry, essays, and short stories in both English and her native Spanish, and translations from and into both languages. Her work, which appears in numerous journals, anthologies, and websites, has received many national and international awards, including the Richard Wilbur Award, the Nemiroff Prize, the Eliot Prize, awards from the New England Poetry Club, the Poetry Society of America, the Frost Foundation, various honors from the Dominican Republic's Ministry of Culture, and a Lifetime Achievement in the Arts Award from Salem State College. Espaillat is a founding member of the Fresh Meadows Poets, the Powwow River Poets, the Melopea Trio, and the quintet known as the Diminished Prophets. Rhina? Rhina, can you unmute yourself?
And I was just talking about St. Alex, whom I call St. Alex because he has to put up with me every time I'm involved with a reading, because I don't unmute myself because I don't know how to come in or go out. But at any rate, he is gracious and wonderful, and I am very grateful to him. And I'm grateful to you, Jennifer, for the lovely introduction. And I have so many friends here, I don't know whom to kiss first. When I first heard about this reading and how it was going to take place, I saw the word sonnet. It was apparently going to be a celebration of the sonnet. And right away I said, oh, good, this is my favorite form. So I'm going to begin with sonnets, but I may end with some other things just to change the menu. I love the sonnet for many reasons, but first of all, because it's musical. It's rightly named sonetto, little song, and it is musical. It can be made musical so many ways, by changing where the white spaces come, by changing the rhyme scheme. It is the most variable of forms. You can do so much with it that I've lost track of how many different sonnet forms there are. I've used a great many of them. I love them all. I love inventing my own. They don't always work, but you know, nobody's perfect. And I also love the sonnet because it becomes so easily an argument, and I love arguing. And the sonnet argues with everything, with the unavoidable, the things that we can't stand in life that fight us, and we fight back by means of these 14 lines. The someone that you know, the memory that you can't get rid of. You fight with all of those. You fight with yourself, the inner conflicts that you always have. You fight between appearance and reality, or between the contradictory feelings that sound as if they couldn't be in the same person, but yes, they are. So the sonnet does your arguing for you, and it does it very well. And sometimes it comes up with no answer at all, which is frustrating, but truthful. So I'm going to read a few sonnets and just to let you swim in sonnets by yourself. This one is called Lynx, and it's ekphrastic. This is my firstborn, Philip, with his firstborn, Evan. And I love the picture because it says, I hope everybody can see it. It says communication. So the look between them, the air between them, the light that glows between them says everything. And here it is. Lynx. In this lost moment that the lens once caught, my son turns, bending slightly toward his son, as if to hear more clearly what is not spoken in words at all. Look how each one, the quiet man in blue and the small boy in his red shirt, attentive and aware, is equally at rest, held by the joy of one another's presence. How the air between them shines with it, as with a glow more lasting than mere day. The child has grown tall as his father now, who years ago outgrew a father who outgrew his own, an endless chain whose links cannot endure. but this court moment says it holds secure. And that's an argument, of course, with the impossibility of holding any moment at all. It can't be done. But you keep hoping that photography will do it, that poetry will do it, that music, that this, that, and the other. So it's a kind of impossibility that we make possible with the arts. That endless chain whose links cannot endure. Here is a sonnet, well, not too romantic, but it's called To My Gallbladder. Because those of you who know me know that some years ago, I had a gallbladder operation, and it was something I didn't want to do. Here it goes. Is this goodbye to you, who for so long have shared my days and nights, so near my heart, I thought that we were one, but I was wrong. What guilt and whose is tearing us apart? Is it my long affair with cheese that grates on you? My glass of wine, or maybe two, with dinner? My refusal to lift weights or do the treadmill thing? And yes, it's true, I've had you tracked with cameras to see what you've been up to, but too late, no use. Too much has soured between you and me that I can't stomach. I must cut you loose. Had we confided sooner, who can tell? No more hard feelings, though. I wish you well. And I want you all to know that we're still friends, although we haven't seen each other in a long time. Here is, and notice this is an English sonnet. This is the one that we're most familiar with, the one that we run into every time we open a book. And it's the one that goes A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. Also called the Shakespearean sonnet or the Elizabethan sonnet, but it's ours. This one is a mix. This has an Italian head and a nonce set of feet, because people do that all the time. They like to break them in pieces and use one part here and one part there. The Italian one is supposed to go A, B, B, A, A, B, B, A, B, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, and then E, F, E, F, or whatever you decide to do with the sustet, which may end in any of a number of different ways. It may be E, F, G, E, F, G, E, F, E, and so forth. You can mix it any way you like. And this one is a mix, which is the way they turn up in English language anthologies. This one has an Italian octave and a nonce sestet, which is not at all right, but I love it. The bargain. I always argue with things. This time I was arguing with time. We can all argue with time. It has done so many things wrong, you know. So here it is. And time had robbed me at that point of a great many things, great many friends, great many people who moved away or moved away permanently to that big workshop in the sky. And I picked a fight. As if ashamed, time said, I'll tell you what, I can't give anything back, but how about I teach you how to almost do without the goods I've repossessed so far? How's that? Well, aren't you all hard? I said. One hand makes off with the silverware, and then the other opens to lend me back again one plastic teaspoon. I don't understand. I'm not such a bad sort, time said, you'll see. But this last effort won't be good forever. There's not so much to reclaim, more bonds to sever, lights to put out, and speech and memory. Trinkets you'll need before I strip you naked. Do reconsider. And I said, I'll take it. Because that's how we generally end our quarrels with time. It always has its way, no matter how well we argue or how reasonably or how truthfully, it always gets to say, but this sale won't last forever. So take what you can get. And almost always we say, I'll take it. So that's the bargain. Here is one. Sonnets make wonderful elegies. They speak to the dead better than almost any form. And this one, well, my books all speak to the dead all the time. But anyway, here is one called For Ginger, my sister-in-law. For Ginger, who hummed, and she hummed as she cooked. Last night, I heard you humming at your stove, slapping about in slippers on the slate of your southwestern kitchen. How it drove sorrow away to smell it, watch you grate your pungent magic on the layered green of jalapenos. But the pearly light of this New England morning fell between your final hour and what I wished by night. How comforting to think, if so, I thought, that on some morning out of time, some place beyond departures, we might both be brought back to the taste, the wooden spoon, your face absorbed in work you loved, your slippered feet, the joy of common days, both brief and sweet. And I miss her to this day. And this is another. This is an Italian beginning, and falls into an English quatrain, and then another English quatrain, and then a couplet. So this is a complete mess. This is a complete mess. But that's the beauty of the sonnet, that you can do a mess. You can make a mess of it, and it will be eloquent and say exactly what you mean if you work your images right. This one goes A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. But it has some elements of the Italian sonnet in it. It has some of the quirks of it. And I love when that happens. Here is one that starts out Italian, or Petrarchan, if that's what you want to call it, which is A, B, B, A, C, D, D, C, E, F, F, D. But then it ends with that English sonnet tail of the couplet, G, G. So it's another mix. And this is for David Berman, a member of the Powell River Poets, whom we lost a few years back, and who was an absolute delight of a person. I'm going to miss him forever. He was very gentlemanly, very, very sweet man, very generous man, a wonderful host. And he had a British accent, which you'll hear at the end. It's called Which of the Arts You Mastered, for David Berman. Which of the arts you mastered through a life rich in accomplishments defines you best? The lawyer's art, that talent you possess for finding order where disorder's rife in human judgment? Or your scholar's way with words, those of Lucretius or St. Paul or ours that you studied? You enriched them all. Or your musician's gift for making play out of the labor of confronting pain? Wit, poet, verbal jeweler, and much more, ornologist and gourmet, chef whose door opened with joy, who said, "Come soon again." Like that, to friends who mourn you, as we should. Come soon again, indeed. We wish we could. And that's for you, David. Here is one. Well, I don't know if I should read these, but I will. This one is a non-sonnet. This is an absolute mess. I made up the rhyme scheme myself. It works for me, but it goes A, B, C, A, B, D, C, E, F, D, E, F, G, G. And somehow it became musical. And it makes music out of something that felt like a scream when I thought of it, because it's about my husband, who was very sick at the time. And a friend in New York said, "Oh, you shouldn't remember him this way. You should remember him as a young man, the way he used to be." And I said, "No, I'm going to remember him every which way." After. Of all my images of you, is this or that the one to keep? The sick old man I washed and fed and diapered like a child, and eased to sleep with morphine and a kiss. Young playful father, master artisan, teacher, author of letters to the press in which your conscience spoke, unreconciled to the denial of justice. Mandolin strummer who chose me for a wife. Soldier home from the front, aged, though still less than 21, and aching to begin, given this second chance at life, your life. You gave yourself to me with ring and vow. I kept all of you then. I mean to now. So that's that. And here is, I'm not going to read that one. And here's another one on a more cheerful note. This is called Morning Dreams. And this is a non-sonnet, and it goes A, B, A, C, D, E, F, F, D, C, E, B, G, G. And what I'm trying to do by telling you the making of these sonnets is getting you excited about experimentation. Because there is nothing more fun than inventing a form or refashioning a form that you already love and then doing something with it. And if it doesn't work, you throw it out, you put it in the garbage can. But most of the time, if the feeling is there, the form will work. And I'm looking at Jean Creeley, who could make the alphabet work no matter what she does. So this is called Morning Dreams. You're in my morning dreams routinely now, busy again, just as you always were, skimming the New York Times with furrowed brow, snacking, scooping out hummus with a knife to spread on crackers. And then off you go, thumping the stairs with those paint-speckled shoes. I'm trying to catch up, but being you, you're rushing, with so much still left to do and no more time. Though I don't think you know, and just as well, that you've run out of life. There's nothing to be gained. Who needs such news with arms at work, their curly golden fur sprinkled with sawdust and a smear of clay? What a perfect beginning to the day. And one of the many things I love about the sonnet is the fact that it always has a surprise in store. When you think it's going to be deadly at the end, it gives you something hopeful. When you think it's going to end hopeful, it gives you something that you wish you had not heard. In other words, it's a form that lets you really say everything. Absolutely everything that you have to say. I haven't found a single thing in my life that I have not been able to cram into those 14 lines. And let me see, what else? Well, here is Discovery. And this one turned into a short story, which sometimes happens. You start with a sonnet and then you think, this takes more details. This has more things happening in it than I could cram into 14 lines. And then it becomes something else, which is a surprise. Discovery. Lifting the phone to call, he heard her laugh on an extension. Something had been said, but what? And who had said it? He was half tempted not to replace it in his bed, but hold it there by his astounded ear, to hear her laugh again in that old way he had not heard since when? Some distant year. But also half afraid what she might say into some other ear elsewhere. He dropped the phone into its cradle, and the room went loudly still, as if his life had stopped like a stopped clock, as if it were a tomb haunted by sounds he knew he used to know, but had forgotten missing long ago. It's the perfect mirror for life. Well, all right, one last one, and then I'll go on to other forms. But I really could read sonnets forever. This is called Oh Wow. Oh Wow. What joy it mimes in tireless repetition, the heart, mugging its echocardiogram. Oh wow, from secret mouths. Now the technician refocuses and shifts the scene I am, shows me which is the mitral valve, whose touch, not quite across the current, lets the flow feather back on itself, but not too much. Take a deep breath and hold it. Let it go. How jubilant, this cheering no one hears. Astonishing bewilderment, the heart rehearses day to day and all its years, gossip relayed to every waiting part, and over such stale news from birth to now as drawing breath. Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow. which is what the thing says when it pleases. Oh, this one. Okay. This is not a sonnet. Do I have time? What time is it? I don't know.
Yes.
I
Yes,
think I
you
have
do.
about what?
Go right
Well,
ahead, Rhina.
About 3 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'll end with this one. This is called Nothing. And it's a narrative poem for Yala, my friend in New York who is gone now and whom I will miss forever. She was a Polish poet, used to translate from Polish, from German, from French, and from English and from Hebrew and Yiddish. So she was a book all by herself. And this is a real story. This happened the last time I saw her. Nothing for Yala. Nothing, she says. Nothing is wrong. Come in. The friend from out of town steps in around her, watches her lock the door from the inside, as always, and embraces her old friend. But what is this? The guest says, pointing at the bandage, makeshift, a handkerchief, folded and pinned to hide one eye. Let's see. Slow, careful lifting of stained white reveals a mass of iridescent black and green, a purple sack of blood under the closed fringe of pale lashes, and a cheek like countries in garish hues on a child's colored map. Nothing, she says again. I fell, that's all. Where? In the hall outside the bathroom door. When? Now the blue Polish eye, unsure, blinks for a moment. Not last night, maybe the night before. And have you seen a doctor? No. Why? Nothing is wrong with me. She takes the flowers and the book of poems, then sits abruptly, as if waiting for her guest to make some further move. Her guarded look, her stillness under stress, remind the guest of her friend's past, how she survived Lvov when those not blonde and blue-eyed disappeared from city after city. How, escaped from the slave labor camp, she made her way, starving but whole, to write again elsewhere, learn a new language for what needed saying. You know, the guest begins, you need to stop picking fights with your neighbors, and they laugh, as old friends do, over absurdities. Well, now, the guest says, shall I water these? The hostess shakes her head with a cold glance at the straw stems left in her indoor garden, dangling from powdery dust and crusty pots. The visitor puts back the pitcher, sits wondering what else to do. A quiet call made from the bedroom to the married daughter living in Jersey. Surreptitious searching to find some doctor's name. The telephone crammed with unanswered messages, unheard. The desk is piled with poems, some unfinished, mingled with bills and still unopened mail, and photographs, the son and daughter, infants, the dead husband, still young, still smiling. Where have you sent this sonnet? Asks the guest. It's glorious. Silence, a dazed look, and then the last, I don't remember it. Are you hungry for lunch? The guest inquires. Of course, she answered brightly. Good, me too. What would you like to eat? Nothing, she says, but slips into her jacket and replaces the bandage. Fish and rice, her favorites, fetched from a nearby restaurant, and then the daughter, frightened, anxious at the door, wary but loving. Then the hospital, where forms to fill are almost a relief. Nurses, a gown, a gurney to a room. After the doctor comes, goodbyes, a promise to stay in touch, and then before night falls, the long-awaited visit ends. 2 buses through Queens, polyglot streets where ragged shops announce their wares in foreign alphabets. The sparkling skyline in the distance, then 2 trains, one over roofs and clotheslines, one under the river to the city's canyons, the hotel room downtown, and home tomorrow. That night, a dream of rowing, effortless, together, one oar reach on waves of nothing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rhina. Thank you so much. For me, your poems transcend the merely beautiful. Your
Thank you.
poems reach the sublime, Rhina, for
Thank
me.
you, Jennifer. Thank you, Jennifer. I like to think that Tim Murphy is watching over us.
Well, I have something to say at the end of our session just about that, and it's to you. So just hold on to that thought.
Okay.
But for me, you are, dear lady, you are to our era what Elizabeth Barrett Browning was to her era. There is no further the sonnet can be pushed than you push it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So I want to ask, do we have Gail now? Is she on?
I'm talking to Gail, and I've been trying to get her, and it's a little bit challenging, but I will say start the Q&A, and hopefully she might be able to join at the end of your Q&A.
Okay.
All
Thanks,
right.
Alex.
Okay.
All right, then I will open up the floor for the viewing audience to ask any questions or make any comments. Please unmute yourselves and tell us what you have to say. Is everyone speechless?
We are. How can we follow that?
Okay, then. Okay. I do have, like I said, I will circle back to you, Rhina, and ask you something. As you know, we share a dear beloved friend in Timothy Murphy. And early on, when I was first coming out, Timothy told me I had absolutely no talent whatsoever, no poetic ability whatsoever. And he told me
he adored you. He adored you. I don't know how he could say such a thing.
He came to, but I'm talking about in the very, very beginning. He told me that the one thing that I had going for me was that I could see logically through an argument and present it and come up on the other side of the argument. And something you said very much intrigued me when you were beginning your reading about sonnet as argument, because it was something at the time that had never occurred to me. And I was grateful. I was very grateful to him on that score, that he made me start thinking of it in that way. And I wonder if you could expound on that a bit, whether your poems begin, those sonnets of yours, do they begin with an argument in your mind?
Very often, and it's almost always an argument with myself. It's about a feeling that goes there, but an opposite feeling that goes there. And they're both true. And I think that one of the things about poetry that has held me since the age of 4 is the fact that poetry is the only way you can say yes and no at the same time. You can say opposites at the same time. You can win and lose at the same time, the same argument. And I don't know how poetry does it, but I know that it does it. Yeah. It's as if the poem had a what do they call it in cowboy movies? A split tongue. You know, it has a cleft tongue.
Forked tongue.
A forked tongue. That's what it is. The sonnet especially has a forked tongue. And it's scary how much you can say that contradicts itself and that turns out to be true. It reminds me of that Roman poet who wrote "I hate you and I love you." Odi et amo. Who was that? Catullus. And he's absolutely right. Absolutely right. You can love and hate the same person. You can be very angry and very grateful to the same person. That happens with parents a lot. I'm telling the truth. and so forth and so forth. The sonnet in particular, but poetry in general, I think. I think John Drury did a good job of pulling stunts of that kind with his poems too. I think he should be asked to answer the same question.
Okay.
Because
Take it away, John. Take it away. What do you do with that?
Well, say the question again so I can respond again.
that's
Rhina?
up to you. Well, the question is, how do you enter a poem? Do you often enter with an argument?
No, I usually enter it with a scrap of language and a sense of a story. It always goes with narrative. Even if there's going to be an argument, there's always a story involved. There's always a language coalescing into a voice.
That's
Big
interesting.
voices for me, not arguments so much.
But the voices belong to people.
People, yes.
Do the people have a relationship to one another?
Sure. I mean, if the ones I read in particular with my mother and me, for instance, or
Yes.
my
Yes.
mother and her partner Carolyn, so that's usually that's the case. And very few of my poems aren't based on narrative.
Yeah. But is it really the narrative that interests you, or is it the people who are living it?
It's the
And
people
conveying
who are
it.
living it, of course. It's a means of getting at that and discovering things that way, rather than necessarily working through an argument.
Do you write short stories too?
No, but I write memoir, I write narrative nonfiction. And I was always intimidated by the idea that I would have to make up stories, although I make up things in poems all the time, but something really was an obstacle to me until I discovered, oh, I can simply write about things that happen, have fidelity to the facts, and yet still, be inventive about what I do with them.
Yeah, you can lie all you like.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, Plato said that we're all
Sure.
liars anyhow.
Sure.
He judged us already, so we may as well be guilty of the sin if he said we did it.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, I went into fiction the other way, through the back door, because I was a teacher in New York. I used to teach creative writing.
Mhm.
Well, I taught all sorts of things, but I loved creative writing. And sometimes when I gave an assignment to a class, it was so interesting that I said, I'd like to be in my class and do that assignment. So sometimes I wrote stories about things that I had told my students to do, and they weren't true at all. And that's how I got into fiction. That was fun.
That's wonderful.
Anybody else have anything to say about
Yes,
poetry
Ann
themselves?
Thompson. Ann Thompson.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a question. First of all, I want to say that I grew up in Bethesda, so I related to the stories about the Washington area. But
Oh, thanks.
both of you, so often when I write, I start out with something and it takes me in such a completely different direction.
Mhm.
And I wanted to ask you both, are there particular instances where you remember a poem that taught you something by the end of it that you didn't even know? Like it took you somewhere you didn't intend to go?
Yes, it happens often. It happens often because you start out with the music, at least I do. I start out with a drum beat. I don't even know what I'm talking about when I begin a poem. I hear, or whatever the beat is. And I know that there's something nibbling away at me from the inside, but I don't know what it is. And it's not until the words slip into the rhythm that I know. The words slip in after the beat is there. And that's what's on my mind. That's what's making me crazy now. And that's just the way it is. And it may be because I got into poetry through the music, through the sound of language, in Spanish first.
Mhm.
because my grandmother used to run sessions in her living room, people who would play the guitar and somebody else would recite and so forth. So I didn't understand what they were saying because I was 4 and they were in their 40s or 50s and so forth, and it was all about tragedies and lost loves and terrible crimes and so forth. I didn't care about that, but the beat made me dance, and I loved to dance. So that was it. That was it. But ever since then, I have been answering the music with words.
Yeah, Rhina, I got involved in poetry through music too, in a couple of ways. Literally, I wrote songs when I was a teenager. That's what I wanted to do.
That's
But
why
I was
you
also-
tell stories.
The poets who attracted me were very musical, Yeats and Dylan Thomas in particular. And I responded to that music too. So it was two things at once. And, the songwriting didn't end up working out exactly, but I ended up writing some poems that started as songs. And I think it's always a process of discovery. I don't know where poems are going to end, even if I'm working in a narrative vein. I normally don't have an idea of the ending. And explore and see. And sometimes I want to write about something that might be a relationship. I remember when I was at the University of Iowa, I wrote a poem called Circle Line about going on the Circle Line boat ride around New York with my dad when I was a kid. And I wasn't happy with it. And over, maybe 20 years, I kept trying different ways. I tried it with long lines. I tried it with rhymed quatrains. I tried it mixing prose and verse. I tried it as a Pindaric ode. And finally, it occurred to me, well, it's circular. Why don't I try a crown of sonnets? And that gave me the room and the groove to do it. But also by then I had a son of my own. So it was my father and me and my son. We were all involved in music in different ways. And we all had our silences. We sang in choruses, we sang in choirs, but silence became the thing that I was exploring. So in that sense, it's not an argument, but maybe an idea or something thematic that the story is circling around.
Thank you so much. Yeah, because I've always found that the sound and the rhythm and the lyrics steers you. It tells you weird.
Well, the thing is, after I know what it is that's on my mind, then I have to figure out what it is I'm thinking about it. Is this something I hate? Is this something I love? Is this something I'm afraid of? The feeling takes more time to arrive than the music does.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that poetry and music were born together, and I think they've never really separated completely. And I can't think of one without the other. Well, I should ask Jean, because Jean is a musician. Can you hear me? Oh, I wish everybody were unhooked. Really. Why don't we just let's liberate everybody?
Yeah.
And I am
Goody.
listening.
Sure.
Goody
I
goody.
am,
Rhina,
I
I just want to say, hearing you speak of music and songs, is Gail here? I'll stop.
No, okay, about Gail, I have to tell you the news about Gail. I've helped her till just now. She managed to get onto the conference. You should have seen Arthur White. But
Is she here?
well, she is here, but somehow I can't get her to get her microphone to work. So I've done.
Oh boy.
First,
Well,
she couldn't get onto Zoom, but eventually she get onto
she
Zoom.
can make noises, do this, so we'll know we
No,
can stop.
but it looks like we'll have to postpone Gail till another time because her microphone, the microphone was, I got her onto Zoom, but the microphone wasn't working. And I can't do anything unless I'm there to fix it. I fixed everything I could fix remotely, but except for her microphone, which I can't fix.
Well, it is our loss, because Gail is one of the great ladies of formalist verse, and I'm so sorry to hear that she can't be with us.
Well, I did everything until she was even able to join, but just her computer wasn't working.
I wonder if
It's not anybody's fault. It's the fault of this witchcraft that we have to work with.
wonder if in Gail's absence, I could read a poem of hers.
Yes, you do that.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
That
Does
is in
anybody
fact,
have Does anybody, you have her book? Do you have her book?
Well, actually, I'm reading from, this is from an issue of Mezzo Cammin online.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Jean.
And it's on a musical subject.
Okay, good.
It's called Opera Rondeau. And then she dies, since men are no damn good, mean, consumptive, and misunderstood. Or Desdemona, most famed of brides, the woman is abandoned on all sides. So she so believes in love, as women should, and in the end, she burns like firewood. Here Tosca on the tower a moment stands, first throwing back her hood, and then her hands, and then one step, invisibly she flies, and then she dies. Poor butterfly, who meant to be so good, tough Carmen, using all the wiles she could to get her man, so many suicides, so many murders. Violetta hides, but can't escape. She's found, she's understood, and then she dies.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That was very thoughtful and most gracious of you.
What she does with repetition is marvelous, because we can feel it coming, but not exactly when it's going to come. So we're on the qui-vive for this.
Could I do another one of Gail's?
Certainly.
Oh, yes.
sorry,
I'd like
Jen.
to, because I think this speaks to the whole idea of the sonnet. It is a sonnet, but Rhina, you make me reflect sadly on the entire second half of the 20th century, when literary magazine editors didn't want to look at a sonnet. And that was hard for those of us who were busy with them. Anyway, this is Gail's poem from a collection from long ago that includes Rhina and me, another poet.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's a wonderful thing.
Yes.
Yes.
But I think you all will recognize this poem of Gail's, which relates to what we think about editors. It's called No Epitaphs, Please. The editor respectfully requests no poems about your father's terminal cancer, your mother's fatal stroke, your best friend's death by suicide. The editor will not answer your inquiries about them. Dust to dust, ashes to ashes, one of every pair of lovers must die first. It seems unjust, but try to be objective. When you care too much, you lose your head. It can't be worse for children than adults. We've all made bad investments in a mortal universe. Sooner or later, all of us are involved in anger, bitterness, regret. We're not philosophers or angels yet.
Wonderful.
Is that perfect? That is a perfect poem.
Wonderful, wonderful, yes.
Jennifer,
Beautiful.
could I read a poem too?
I'm sorry?
Gail? Could I read a poem by Gail too?
Absolutely. And then I have a question for you.
Okay, but I'd like to read the one because I think I'm really interested in the form of the ballade. And in her book, Asperity Street, she has the ballade of Madame Bovary. So I'd like to read this. Was it for this I learned to read and write and bake a cherry pie? I was romantic. All I need is love, was my incessant cry. But girls, however hard you try, how long you work, how much you fret, you'll meet the same reward as I. A country doctor's all you get. A wife is only fit to breed her brats and sing their lullaby. Oh, had I only given heed to those sweet nuns who glorify the Lord in prayer and daily die. I might have been a virgin yet, but marriage makes the world a sty. A country doctor's all you get. I learned to do adultery's deed. I took 2 lovers, one a sly and skillful horseman, I the steed he rode with such an expert thigh. My second love was sweetly shy, an easy fish in rapture's net. But when I needed cash, goodbye, a country doctor's all you get. L'Envoy. Girls, never raise your hopes too high. Lower your standards and forget you meant to catch a rich man's eye. A country doctor's all you get.
It's very
Terrific.
Not good.
Thank you,
what she does.
John.
This is what she, does anybody have the book? I have it upstairs, but I don't want to run around. The one about how I got married after all. The poem by Gail, where she says, in effect, you thought I'd be an old maid, but
Oh,
it's wonderful, that one. I have to find it. I have to find it. Speak among yourselves.
Does anyone have any more questions for John?
Yes. Yeah, this is Mark Stone. Let me turn on my camera 1 second.
Hi, Mark.
Really
I'd
ran
like
off
to
to
be
get
able
it,
to
and I
see
have
you.
it here.
Yes. Welcome.
Okay. I'm sorry I'm out of breath. My wife and I are walking around the block, but I've got 2 questions.
sure.
The first is, what is your process for having a poem reviewed before you send it out for publication? And the second question is, how do you know when a poem is quote unquote done?
Well, I mean, Paul Valéry said it's simply abandoned. You can just keep going on and on. I've certainly revised poems beyond when they've been published. And in fact, beyond when they've been published in book form. But for me, the editing is in-house, and the editor is my wife, LaWanda Walters, who is the author of Light is the Odalisque, which is published by Press 53. And we are both each other's editors, encouragers, and critics.
Yeah, I've made him cry.
Yes, you have. and LaWanda tells me if something isn't working. She's very frank. So I know when she praises something, it means something. And she makes suggestions too, which I'm foolish if I don't at least try to see how they'll lead.
An honest answer is like a kiss on the lips.
Yes.
You have to write that poem, Jennifer. You need to write it.
Yes, you do.
Rhina, did you find the poem?
I did find it, and here it is. And it's called My Personal Recollections of Not Being Asked to the Prom.
Oh, wow.
I never minded my unpopularity in those days. Books were friends, and poets, dead, were lovers. Brainy girls were still a rarity, and boys preferred big bosoms to well-read and saucy wits. I look back now with pity on the young me I didn't pity then. I didn't know that I was almost pretty and might have had a charm for older men in capital letters. And my poor mom, who never bought a fluffy ball gown or showed me how to dress my hair, she must have wondered where she got this stuffy daughter. She didn't say it, but her stare asked whether genes or nurture were to blame. But I got married, Mother, all the same. I love that poem. I love that poem.
Thank you for getting it for us. That was worth it. It was worth it.
That's wonderful.
That's in Asperity Street, isn't it?
It's in what? No, it's in Landscapes with Women.
Oh, I thought it was
The one that, and you know who else is in here? Barbara Lutz.
Yeah.
Where are you, Barbara?
It's reprinted here. It's in
Yeah.
Asperity.
Oh, it's in, that's right. I have that
Yes.
one too. I have all of her stuff, all of her work. I have. There you are, Barbara. She doesn't hear me. Oh, I hate
Leslie,
this.
do you have landscapes in your hand there?
I
I
do.
The
do.
miracle book?
Yes, the
I
miracle.
do. Yes, Barbara. And
Do you have one?
I do. And I have one, the one.
Oh, Leslie,
Gail-
I didn't know you were here. How lovely.
Yeah, I've been here, but there was a Dodger game going on behind me and on the TV, and now the score is nothing and lost interest, and I came on screen, but there's a sonnet by Gail in here.
Yeah. Oh, there are several.
Teach us to pray, and it reminds me you have a similarity, Rhina, in the way you speak to the Almighty.
Yeah. Well, I do a lot of arguing with the Almighty.
So I'll read it quickly here. Teach us to pray. Can we communicate I've read your book with interest. You can point a metaphor like nobody's business. But can you speak to the present century's needs? I'm still not sure. Things aren't as easy when you were here. Things aren't as easy as when you were here last. The poor are not a grateful lot. Our ethics fell apart. We're not too clear what's wrong or even what's more wrong than not. My mother called you father. Now I'm told you might be female. That's okay with me, but could you get it straight? We're talking cold facts here. I want eternal verities, not false today and true tomorrow. Please reply. ASAP, I'm getting old.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, John, I have a question for you. Are you there?
I'm here.
I was spellbound by your Powhatan poem, and I would like to know, how did that arise? How did that come about for you?
The Ballad of Edward Waters.
Yes.
Yes. Well, you know, it came about because I got interested in trying to make imaginary movies in poems. And so I've done, maybe I've done 8 of them, I guess, and 6 of them are in that new collection I've just finished. And in fact, each section is anchored by one. I think of that as an imaginary movie. And what it would need in an actual film is to splice and kind of interweave the 1609 passages with the 1980 passages and back and forth. Because I didn't want that in the poem. I wanted the whole ballad. I wanted the sections to be discrete. And I was just sort of sketching things out. And the first thing that came to me was that a conversation between John Waters and my mother. She talked about it a lot. And the reason she didn't call him is she was afraid he'd want to cast her in his movies. And I think he might have. It seemed like a natural pairing in a way. I still don't know if we're related, but and so I wrote that. But it took a long time. When I first saw it, I knew I wanted to write a ballad since I knew a little about Edward Waters. But when I tried to do it, I was faking it. I was making up details based on a rough sense of Elizabethan England, Jacobean England in that case. And it didn't work. So I had to plunge into the research. I had to get the details. And so the details came as little images, little word clusters, things I could use. And then I could go with it. And that helped a lot. It was sort of music that, you know, the pink tinged beach and the turquoise lagoon, that's in the source materials, which were wonderful. I mean, the Espaillat account is really vivid. And the Captain John Smith version is pretty good too. And it's secondhand, where Espaillat is first person evidence in a way. But that's kind of what got me involved in that. And I knew right away I wanted to do it as a ballad. I'm teaching a course I've taught many times at the University of Cincinnati on music and poetry. And we devote a great deal of attention early on to ballad meter and hymn meter. It's remarkable how much that comes and goes with different poets, different composers. And it crops up where you don't expect it. So that's a kind of a joy to connect music and poetry that way in the teaching, and I'm always thinking about that. I was also thinking of a tune while I wrote that. I was thinking of the original tune for Sir Patrick Spence. The king sits in Dunfermline town drinking the blood red wine. Oh, where will I get a good sailor to sail the ship of mine? But I was kind of doing this to myself with the melody, which goes like this. I'll embarrass myself. I don't mind, because I tell the students everyone can sing. The king sits in Dunfermline town, drinking the blood red wine. Oh, where will I get a good sailor to sail this ship of mine? And there are a couple of wonderful recordings. Gene Redpath has recorded a cappella, and so has Ewan MacColl, who actually was a songwriter as well. He wrote The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, but he sang these the Scots language is almost impossible to decipher if you don't have the words in front of you. He goes off on tangents with verses I don't even know, and I have no idea what he's really singing. But all that melody is rooted, is anchoring it.
And I remember details from that ballad, like the hats floating on the surface of the water.
Yeah, they were loath to wet their cork-heeled shoon, but long after the play was played, their hats they swam aboon.
They swam
aboon
over their heads.
It's so great. It's so cinematic.
Well, yeah, the ballad is a wonderful form.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So is the ballad, but I think I like the ballad even more.
Yeah.
The rough and tumble of it.
Yeah, I like that too.
You do make movies. You do make movies. I can hear it in the way you describe poems.
Yes, there is such a pronounced historical flair in that poem.
Mhm.
There, that there is the term suspension of disbelief.
Right, sure.
In the reader that we have to bring to any work, and sometimes we have to work at it more than other times. Yours is just effortless, and I think that it's funny that you mentioned that about the movie scene, because I was really thinking what a cinematic element there is to that piece.
Oh, thanks. That was good. That's sort of part of the intention of it, trying to do it through the song and the.
It comes through beautifully. It does.
Thanks, Jennifer.
I write short stories too, and there was something that happened in my mother's hometown before she was born that became a kind of folk tale for the future. And I heard it early in my life and so on. And I always thought this would make a great story. So I kept trying to write the short story. It was terrible. Everything I had to keep tearing it up and throwing it out. It was just no good. One night I went to bed thinking about something totally different. It was not on my mind at all. And I woke up with the story, but it was a ballad.
Mm-hmm.
It had somehow overnight turned into a ballad. And to this day, I don't know how that happened. But I have a theory that the poems are much smarter than we are.
Mm-hmm.
That they really know what they want to be, and we may not. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I've always told students the most important part of writing is listening. You have to listen internally to what the poem is telling you.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't want to be that, it's not going to do anything for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to close the door on you.
So let me I'm sorry, go ahead.
That sometimes it comes in sleep. Sometimes I wake up with the right answer, because apparently when you're unconscious, you're really listening.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand any of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me interject. Alex, are you there? Or what are we? What's our goal here now? Is Gail up at all?
So whenever the Q&A is done, we can just you can wrap up. I think it looks like we're about there at this stage, right?
Yeah, I guess.
All right, thank you. So does anyone have anything further to add or inquire or?
Well, I have a poem to end with, and it's about food.
Well, do it for us then, Rhina. Do it.
Okay, it's called Seasoning. Moving from right to left like Hebrew prayers, I seasoned supper. Garlic, pepper, salt, oregano perhaps, whose tang of farmyard beckons me away to fields long built on, to pots and spoons long rusted by slow rains under another sky, to tables set for those who will not share with me again the daily psalm and sacrament of food. From right to left I season, left to right I put the condiments away. Such sleights of mind are how I signal memory home again to this dish to keep from seasoning twice. Where does it hide, this disillusion, wanderlust that springs to find us after the first goodbyes and the last weddings? There's not a perfume, not a ribbon of music that doesn't wind somewhere away from this hour and place, as if all roads conspired to lead us out of what Rome we have, what room we know. Well, I'm prepared. From right to left like Kaddish, I sprinkle salt on this flesh, all flesh. Then, ecumenical, I cross it left to right in token of hope's gospel, to hail the second coming, or the sun, whichever remembers to come first.
That is perfect. That is perfect. Well, then I will wrap everything up. I want to say thank you all so much for attending, for being with us, and for sharing with us. I want to say thank you especially to Karina Fernandez, who is Alex's right-hand woman. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Rhina. Thank you, Gail, even though we can't hear you or see you. Thank you, John. And bless you all. May your dreams be filled with poetry and be inspired.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, Jennifer. And I'll have to add that I'm not sure what happened with the recording, but I think we'll probably miss some of the beginning because of all the, circular things we're doing, going to the one preparation video and then coming back to this one. But I'm sure I'll have enough of it for everyone to enjoy.
Okay.
Not
Thanks,
everything, but enough
Thank
of it.
you, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Awanda.
Thank you,
Lawanda.
everyone.
I will
night,
get
everybody.
hold of you through John's place at Able Muse.
Okay.
Oh, and I also have to add that our next reading for next month will be a launch reading for 3 authors.
Oh.
And one of them will be David Berman, and who is a very beloved powwow member who left us unfortunately. And also we'll have 2 other younger authors. We'll have J.C. Todd, and we'll have Will Cordero, who won last 2 Able Muse poetry contests. So that will be the next event.
I'll be there. John, it was a pleasure to read with you.
A mutual pleasure. Thanks, Rhina.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good
night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Nice.
You're welcome.